Lucas Grant was a very rich and powerful man. He owned a huge company called Grant Industries, and everyone knew his name. He was used to getting whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted it. He was strict, serious, and always in control. But one rainy afternoon, something happened that he never expected. Something that would change his life forever. As his expensive black car, a Bentley, drove slowly down the street, Lucas stared out the window. The rain tapped lightly against the glass, and people hurried under umbrellas to stay dry. Then, out of nowhere, he saw her. Ava Carter. His heart skipped a beat. Ava was his ex-girlfriend from 10 years ago. The woman he had loved more than anything. The woman he had been forced to leave because of his father's demands. Seeing her now, after all this time, made his chest feel tight. But that wasn't the biggest shock. Standing next to Ava were 3 children, 2 boys and a little girl. They were all huddled together under a big umbrella, trying to stay dry while they waited for the bus. The oldest boy looked about 8 years old, the girl was maybe 6, and the youngest boy was probably 4. Lucas stared. And then, his whole body froze. Because these children looked just like him. The oldest boy had Lucas's sharp jawline, the same one he saw in the mirror every morning. The little girl had bright hazel eyes just like Lucas's mother. And the youngest boy? He had the exact same frown Lucas used to make when he was a kid, the one his own father used to tease him about. Lucas couldn't breathe. No, this can't be real. His mind raced. If these kids looked that much like him, did that mean? Were they his children? The car kept moving, but Lucas couldn't take his eyes off them. He turned his head, watching as Ava adjusted the little girl's jacket, her face calm but tired. The oldest boy said something, and Ava smiled softly, ruffling his hair. Lucas's hands clenched into fists. If these were his kids, that meant Ava had been pregnant when he left. 10 years ago. And he never knew. His stomach twisted. He had missed everything. Their first steps, their first words, their first days of school. All because he had walked away, believing his father's lies that Ava didn't want him anymore. Now, here they were. His family. Waiting for a bus in the rain while he sat in a car worth more than most houses. The thought made him sick. "Stop the car," Lucas suddenly ordered. His driver glanced back. "Sir." Asterisk now. Asterisk. The car pulled over. Lucas didn't even wait for the door to be opened for him. He stepped out into the rain, his expensive shoes splashing in a puddle, but he didn't care. His heart pounded as he walked toward the bus stop. Ava hadn't noticed him yet. She was helping the youngest boy tie his shoe. Then, the little girl looked up. Her eyes locked onto Lucas. She tugged Ava's sleeve. "Mommy, who's that man?" Ava turned. And when she saw Lucas standing there, her face went pale. For a long second, no one spoke. The rain poured down around them. Then, Lucas took a step forward. His voice was rough, barely above a whisper. "Ava, are these my kids?" Ava's lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't answer right away. But she didn't have to. The truth was written all over their faces. And Lucas knew his life would never be the same again. The rain fell harder as Lucas stood frozen in front of Ava and the 3 children who shared his face. Water dripped from his dark hair onto his expensive suit, but he didn't even notice. His whole world had just tilted sideways. Lucas." Ava's voice came out shaky, her brown eyes wide with shock. She instinctively moved closer to the children, her arms spreading slightly as if to shield them. The protective gesture made Lucas's stomach twist. The oldest boy, Jamie, looked up at his mother with confusion. "Mom? What's wrong?" His little sister Sophia clutched Ava's coat, while the youngest, Ethan, peeked around his mother's legs at the strange wet man staring at them. Lucas barely registered the cold rain soaking through his clothes. His mouth felt dry as he forced out the question burning in his chest. "Are these mine?" His deep voice cracked on the last word. Ava's lips pressed into a thin line. For several heartbeats, the only sound was the patter of rain around them. Then she lifted her chin in that stubborn way Lucas remembered so well. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "But we didn't need you. We've been fine on our own." The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He swayed slightly, his mind racing. 3 children. His children. All these years. Jamie tugged on Ava's sleeve, his young voice cutting through the tension. "Mom, who's this guy?" He eyed Lucas with a mix of curiosity and suspicion that seemed far too mature for an 8-year-old. Lucas's chest tightened painfully. They didn't even know his name. His own children had no idea who he was. The bus arrived with a squeal of brakes, its doors opening with a hiss. Passengers hurried to board, casting curious glances at the well-drenched businessman standing motionless by the stop. Ava hesitated, her eyes flickering between Lucas and the bus. "We have to go," she said finally, her voice firm but with an undercurrent of something else, sadness? Regret? As she shepherded the children toward the bus, Lucas found his voice. "Wait." He reached out but stopped short of touching her. Just tell me where you live. Please." Sophia turned to look at him as she climbed the bus steps, her hazel eyes his mother's eyes filled with innocent curiosity. Ethan waved shyly before disappearing inside. Jamie kept his gaze locked on Lucas until the doors closed between them. Through the rain-streaked window, Lucas watched as Ava finally met his eyes one last time before the bus pulled away, taking his family with it. Standing alone in the downpour, Lucas felt something wet slide down his cheek that had nothing to do with the rain. He had a family. A family who didn't know him. A family who, from the looks of their worn but clean clothes and the way Ava had hesitated over bus fare, had been struggling while he lived in luxury. His driver approached cautiously with an umbrella. "Sir? Should I follow that bus?" Lucas didn't answer immediately. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts: anger at his father for keeping this from him, guilt for all the missed years, determination to make things right. Finally, he nodded sharply. "Yes. And call my lawyer. There are things I need to know." As the car pulled away from the curb, Lucas stared at the disappearing bus, unaware that his fists were clenched so tightly his nails were leaving marks in his palms. He would find them. He would learn everything. And this time, he wouldn't walk away. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet chime, but Lucas Grant stormed into his penthouse like a thundercloud. His expensive shoes left wet footprints across the marble floor as he paced back and forth, his mind racing faster than his feet could move. The rain from outside still clung to his hair and suit, but he didn't care. He couldn't think about anything except those 3 little faces he'd seen at the bus stop. His children. His hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. All these years, he believed Ava didn't want him anymore. His father had told him she'd moved on, that she was happy without him. But the truth? She'd been carrying his child when he left. No, not just one child. 3. 3 children who had his eyes, his smile, his stubborn frown. The penthouse felt too quiet, too empty. Lucas walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the city lights blurring through the rain. Somewhere out there, in a small apartment he'd never seen, his children were probably getting ready for bed. Did they share a room? Did they have enough blankets? The thought of his little girl shivering in a cold apartment made his chest hurt. A sharp knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant, Mr. Thompson, stood there holding a thick folder. "Sir, I have the information you requested." Lucas snatched the folder and flipped it open right there in the doorway. Inside were photos, addresses, school records. His fingers trembled slightly as he saw their names for the first time in writing: James Jamie Carter, age 8. Sophia Carter, age 6. Ethan Carter, age 4. All with Ava's last name. Not his. Page after page told the story he'd missed: doctor visits, school registrations, birthday parties he wasn't invited to. His eyes burned as he saw a photo of Sophia's first day of kindergarten, her little hands clutching a backpack almost as big as she was. "Where do they live?" Lucas demanded, his voice rough. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. "A small apartment in the East District. According to records, Ms. Carter works 2 jobs: days at a law office as a secretary, nights at a diner." Lucas's jaw tightened. He knew that area. It wasn't the safest neighborhood, and the schools weren't good. His children deserved better. They deserved everything. Without another word, Lucas turned and marched to his bedroom. He changed into dry clothes with quick, angry movements. His reflection in the mirror showed dark circles under his eyes. He hadn't slept properly in years, always working, always chasing more success. Now he knew why he'd never felt satisfied. A piece of him had been missing all along. Morning came too slowly. Lucas spent the night staring at the ceiling, going over everything in his mind. When the first light of dawn crept through his windows, he was already dressed and ready. His driver looked surprised to see him so early. "Where to, sir?" Lucas gave the address without hesitation. As the car moved through the waking city, he rehearsed what he would say 100 times in his head. But when they pulled up to the small, slightly run-down apartment building, all his prepared words flew out of his mind. The stairwell smelled like old carpet and yesterday's cooking. Lucas's polished shoes sounded too loud on the steps as he climbed to the 3rd floor. When he reached apartment 3B, he took a deep breath and knocked firmly. From inside he heard the pitter-patter of small feet, then a child's voice saying, "Mommy, someone's at the door." There was a pause, then the sound of locks turning. The door opened just enough to show Ava's surprised face. She was dressed for work in a simple blouse and skirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Behind her, Lucas could see Jamie peeking around the corner, his eyes wide. Before Ava could speak, Lucas said the words he'd been holding in all night. "You're coming with me." Ava's eyebrows shot up. She stepped partially into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind her. "What are you talking about? We have school and work today. You can't just show up like this." Lucas shook his head. "Not to visit. To stay. You and the kids are moving into my home today." Ava crossed her arms over her chest, that same stubborn look he remembered from years ago. "We don't need your money, Lucas." The words stung, but Lucas stood his ground. "I'm not giving you money," he said, his voice low but strong. "I'm giving you everything. A safe home. Good schools. A father for our children." He took a step closer. "A second chance for us." From inside the apartment, Sophia's voice called out, "Mommy? Who are you talking to?" Ava glanced back at the door, then at Lucas. He could see the war going on behind her eyes, pride versus what was best for the kids. "Finally," she sighed. "Give us 1 hour to pack." Lucas nodded, his heart pounding. As Ava went back inside, he heard Ethan ask, "Is the Rain Man coming to play with us?" Standing in that dim hallway, Lucas Grant made a silent promise to himself and to his children. He would spend every day making up for the years he'd missed. He would be the father they deserved. And this time, he wouldn't let anyone take his family away from him. The moving trucks had come and gone, leaving Lucas's enormous house filled with boxes and the sounds of children's laughter echoing through halls that had been too quiet for too long. It had been 3 weeks since Lucas brought Ava and the children to live with him, and every day felt like both a gift and a challenge. Jamie, Sophia, and Ethan had adapted surprisingly quickly to their new home. Their voices bounced off the high ceilings as they explored rooms bigger than their entire old apartment. Lucas watched from the doorway as Ethan raced toy cars across the polished hardwood floors of the playroom he'd had specially designed. The little boy's giggles filled the air as the cars crashed into miniature traffic cones. "Again. Again." Ethan cheered, his chubby hands clapping together. Lucas smiled and knelt down to reset the toy cars. "Watch this time," he said, showing Ethan how to line them up just right. "If you angle them like this, they'll go even faster." In the corner, Sophia sat at a small table covered in colored paper and glue sticks, her tongue poking out in concentration as she worked on a school project. Lucas had stayed up late the night before helping her research planets for her solar system diorama. "Dad," she said seriously, "does Jupiter really have a giant red spot that's a storm?" Lucas moved to her side, careful not to disturb her carefully arranged planets. "It does. A storm so big it could fit 3 Earths inside it." Sophia's eyes grew wide. "Whoa." A throat cleared behind them. Lucas turned to see Jamie standing in the doorway, his baseball glove dangling from one hand. "You said we could practice catching today," the boy reminded him, trying to sound casual but unable to hide the hope in his voice. Lucas checked his watch. "And we will. Right after lunch." He ruffled Jamie's hair, something he'd learned the boy secretly liked even though he pretended to scowl about it. As Lucas headed toward the kitchen to check on lunch, he nearly bumped into Ava carrying a stack of freshly folded laundry. She sidestepped gracefully, but didn't meet his eyes. "You're good with them," she said quietly, adjusting the clothes in her arms. Lucas reached out to take the pile from her. "I'm trying." He searched her face. "Are you settling in okay? I know this must be different." Ava finished for him. That's one word for it. She finally looked up at him, her dark eyes unreadable. Jamie told me you signed him up for private baseball lessons. And Sophia's been talking non-stop about the new telescope you ordered for her. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. I just want them to have everything they need. Ava sighed. You can't just buy their love, Lucas. The word stung, but Lucas knew she was right. He set the laundry down on a nearby table and gently cupped her face in his hands. I'm not trying to buy it, he said softly. I'm trying to earn it. Every day. A tear slipped down Ava's cheek. Lucas caught it with his thumb. 10 years is a long time to miss, she whispered. Lucas leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Then let's not waste another second. For the first time since they'd moved in, Ava didn't pull away. Instead, she rested her forehead against his shoulder, just for a moment, before straightening up. Jamie's been waiting all morning for that catch, she said, wiping her eyes quickly. You should go. As Lucas headed back to the playroom to collect Jamie, he paused to watch his children through the doorway. Ethan was now driving his toy cars up Sophia's back as she lay on her stomach coloring, making her giggle uncontrollably. Jamie stood by the window practicing his pitching motion, his tongue sticking out in concentration, just like Lucas used to do at that age. His family. Lucas knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be tough conversations about why he hadn't been there, about trust that needed to be rebuilt with Ava, about learning to be a father to children who were already growing up. But as Jamie turned and saw him in the doorway, his face lighting up with a smile that was all Lucas, he knew he'd move mountains to keep that smile there. Ready to play some ball, champ? Lucas asked, holding out the glove he'd bought for himself. Jamie nodded eagerly. Think you can catch my fastball? Lucas grinned. Only one way to find out. As they headed out into the backyard together, the sounds of Sophia's laughter and Ethan's happy squeals following them, Lucas realized something wonderful. This was just the beginning. The courtroom was quiet except for the scratch of the judge's pen as she signed the final documents. Lucas stood perfectly still, barely daring to breathe as the woman looked up with a warm smile. Congratulations, Mr. Grant, the judge said, sliding the papers across the desk. It's official. Lucas's hands shook slightly as he accepted the documents that changed everything. There it was, in black and white, James Grant. Sophia Grant. Ethan Grant. His children. Really, truly his in every way that mattered. A small hand tugged at his suit jacket. Daddy. Sophia whispered loudly. Can we go get ice cream now? Behind him, Jamie tried to look serious like a grown-up in his little suit and tie, but his feet were dancing with excitement. Ethan was busy spinning in circles, his dress shoes squeaking on the polished floor. Lucas knelt down to their level. Absolutely. Any flavor you want. Ava stood nearby, her eyes shining as she watched Lucas with the children. Over the past 6 months, she'd seen the billionaire who once cared only about business become a man who cancelled important meetings for school plays and knew all the words to silly cartoon theme songs. That evening, after ice cream sundaes with sprinkles and a celebratory dinner where Ethan spilled chocolate milk all over his nice clothes, Lucas carried his sleepy youngest up to bed. The nursery that had once been a cold, perfect guest room was now covered in colorful drawings and stuffed animals. Lucas carefully changed Ethan into dinosaur pajamas, the little boy nearly asleep on his feet. As Lucas tucked him in, Ethan's small hand suddenly grabbed his finger. Daddy, he murmured, his eyelids drooping. Will you stay this time? The simple question hit Lucas like a punch to the heart. He remembered all the bedtime stories he'd missed, all the nightmares he hadn't been there to chase away, all the mornings he didn't get to wake them up. He swallowed hard, blinking quickly as he smoothed Ethan's curls. Always, Lucas promised, his voice thick. I'm never leaving you again. Ethan smiled sleepily and curled around his favorite stuffed bear, already drifting off, safe in the knowledge his daddy would be there in the morning. Downstairs, Lucas found Ava waiting for him in the cozy living room, now filled with family photos and children's artwork. She held out a cup of hot chocolate to him, the cheap, powdered kind they'd always drunk together in college, not the fancy imported stuff his chef usually made. You did it, she said softly, nodding to the framed adoption certificate on the table. Lucas took the mug, his fingers brushing hers. We did it, he corrected. He looked around at their home, really a home now, not just a house. Somewhere upstairs, Jamie was probably reading under his covers with a flashlight, and Sophia was definitely trying to sneak her kitten into bed with her. For years, Lucas had measured his worth in billions and business deals. He'd thought he had everything until that rainy day at the bus stop showed him what he was really missing. Now, as Ava leaned against him and they listened to the quiet sounds of their sleeping household, Lucas finally understood what true wealth felt like. It wasn't in bank accounts or properties. It was in Jamie's proud smile when he mastered a new pitch. It was in Sophia's endless questions about the universe. It was in Ethan's sticky hugs and Ava's hand in his. The billionaire who once had everything had finally found the only thing that really mattered: his family. The end.